When you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity, this afternoon at 2, right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Dan and Amy, good morning. And Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. Tiffany Brown I'm talking about in this instance.
Different kind of Brown.
FEMA tapped Tiffany Brown, an Atlanta entrepreneur with no experience in large-scale disaster relief, and at least 5 canceled government contracts in her past. FEMA awarded her a $156 million contract for the job of providing meals for Puerto Rican families in need after the hurricane. Ms. Brown is the sole owner, this is from a New York Times report, the sole owner and employee of her company, Tribute Contracting, LLC. And then after getting awarded the contract, then she tried to figure out how to fulfill it. Hiring a wedding caterer in Atlanta with a staff of 11 to freeze-dry mushrooms and rice, chicken and rice, vegetable and rice foods. Found a nonprofit in Texas that had shipped food aid overseas. By the time 18.5 million meals were due, Ms. Brown had delivered 50,000. And, as if that isn't bad enough.
How could it get any worse?
Yeah, FEMA inspectors discovered a problem.
Oh, there's another problem?
In addition to the 18.45 million meals that are missing, there's another problem. The 50,000 she delivered, the food had been packaged separately from the pouches used to heat them. And, of course, the solicitation required self-heating meals because of things like the lack of power and gas to cook meals in a hurricane-ravaged area. Okay. So, yeah.
It's a logistical nightmare. I mean, but also, too.
What's a logistical nightmare?
Well, first of all.
Providing a hurricane relief is a logistical challenge.
Right, that's a logistical challenge.
This contracting is a completely man-made disaster.
Well, why in the world did they not do a background check to see that 5 other contracts, government contracts with her, had been canceled?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's in charge?
Yeah.
What in the world is going on?
But you know
she should be in jail. She should give the money back, or she should be thrown in jail.
Her contract was terminated by the FEMA contracting officer.
Yeah, where is she now? Vacationing somewhere in the Bahamas?
Yeah.
Took the money and run?
There's a lot of questions being asked after the fact, but this is the kind of whole. There's the Cajun Army, and I mean, look, the Coast Guard and our relief. The relief functions that some government agencies perform, particularly the military agencies like the Coast Guard, they do, they're great and all that. But I mean, the whole idea of something like this could only happen really in the sclerotic leviathan that is the federal government. Even as much as Trump has kind of stemmed the tide of regulation that has been a hallmark of government growth over the last 50 years, even you still have these problems, and you're going to have these problems. It's an endemic to an organization as big as as complicated and as which no bottom line sensitivity and little accountability. I mean, at least as compared to the accountability that bottom line sensitivity brings in the private sector.
I love it though. FEMA, insists that no Puerto Ricans missed a meal as a result of this.
Well, if that's true, then why did you need 30 million meals and not 50,000? So no matter what FEMA's response is, it prompts another complicated or difficult question for them to answer, doesn't it? Nobody missed a meal. Well, okay, well, by the time 18.5 million meals were due, she had delivered 50,000. So how'd you make up for the 18.45 million that weren't delivered? Nobody missed a meal. Yeah, okay. Keep spinning me. For more on this topic and others, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Steve Moore, Wall Street Journal columnist, CNN senior economist, former Trump advisor. Steve, did you see that FEMA story?
Morning, guys. By the way, I'm off the ledge. I'm no longer jumping out the window. I mean, we got a good day on the stock market yesterday, and it's so funny. I was doing CNN throughout the day because they love the story of the crashing stock market, and then throughout the day they have the stock market ticker on their screen, and at about I'm trying to remember, around 3 or 4 o'clock yesterday, the stock market all of a sudden it's just, turned big time, and it went up like 400, 500 points in an hour. And as soon as the stock market went up over 400 points, they took the stock market ticker down, and they just stopped talking about it altogether.
Yeah,
so
isn't Trump making a mistake by continuing to obsess about the Dow Jones and the S&P? Isn't that a mistake?
Well, I've been asked that question so many times in the last few days. No, he's not making a mistake. I mean, the stock market was up 47% since he was elected, and $7.5 trillion had been created. Now, did we get a correction? Sure, we did. And I had been making this case, by the way, that the market probably was running a little bit ahead of itself. Maybe there's a little bit of irrational exuberance, but even with that correction, the stock market's still up 35% since Trump was elected. I mean, that's a gigantic increase. I mean, even with the losses, the market's up $6 trillion. So, Trump's policies have been good. And the point I made throughout the last 3 or 4 days is the fundamental real economy indicators are so strong. I mean, the most amazing thing was that on Friday, the very day that the stock market started to collapse, the earnings reports came out. The Wall Street Journal had a headline that day: 80% of companies had exceeded their earnings expectations. Well, if earnings are higher, you'd expect the stock market to go up, right? Because, as my friend Larry Kudlow says, profits are the mother's milk of the stock market. And yet, even with higher earnings, the stock market fell. And part of that was just this kind of neurosis that people have when people start selling. Everybody starts selling. But
Right.
look, I feel good about the overall direction of the economy. I got a great jobs report on Friday. Wages went up by 3%. And by the way, that was really the spring trigger for the stock market sell-off, was that wages went up, because that spooked Wall Street, thinking that that's going to cause inflation. But I'm here to tell you that prosperity and people working and wage increases for workers does not cause inflation. If more people are working, that means you get more output, not less, and prices come down, they don't rise.
But why is there, what yesterday the Dow changed directions 29 times? What was
that was the most amazing day.
I know, and the anxiety's there. I don't know how you survived your day, but obviously you're here with us to discuss it. But what caused it? What if you had to honestly? Was it the job numbers that were released on Friday?
So what caused the fall, on Friday, Monday, was these two reports. The one that indicated we were going to get 5% growth in the first quarter. That was by the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. And the second was the good jobs report with wage increases. By the way, that's what we wanted. That's the reason we did the tax cut. We want workers to be paid more. And so, but there's this Keynesian view out there that's still prevalent on Wall Street, that when workers do better and get a pay raise, somehow that means that there's going to be inflation in the economy. But that's such an old-fashioned, discredited idea. And, as my friend Art Laffer says, if you get more people working, they produce more apples. What happens to the price of apples if you produce more apples? They go down. They don't go up. So I don't believe this idea that prosperity causes inflation. Now, your question about what happened yesterday, I don't have a good answer for. It was the craziest day. I mean, my neck is sore from the whiplashing of the market going up and down. It was an incredible roller coaster. I mean, at one point it was down 600 points, and then it rose 1,100 points to being up by 500 points. And why you saw that incredible amount of volatility in one day, I don't know. I think my only response to that could be, there's two things that drive the stock market, right? Fear and greed. And at one point, fear was prevailing, and then people saw opportunities to make money, and greed took over. So,
right.
I don't think that the market is underpriced right now. I really don't.
All right, I'm going to cede my response to the iconic Carl Icahn, Steve, talking about exchange-traded funds, and that one day this market is going to implode. Listen to what Icahn had to say.
You have these triple leveraged ETFs that are crazy. I mean, you have these index funds with leveraged ETFs against them, where I don't see any difference between that and 1929. So eventually, this is just a little rumbling, a little fault line. I think this market will bounce back probably. I think, eventually you get through this little panic thing. But one day, this thing is just going to implode because you have too much leverage with too many people buying these things, and Wall Street sells them these products. And I've been saying for a long time, it's extremely dangerous.
Steve?
Well, was that Carl Icahn?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, that guy's an amazing, financial genius. So that makes me nervous.
Yeah, me too. I know.
I'm not an expert on these ETFs and these exotic, instruments that people use for finance. And he may be right. That's out of my league. But I'll say this: when I just look at the fundamentals of the economy right now, what's happening with hiring. What's happening with business investment, what's happening with corporate earnings, what's happening with the low unemployment rate, with business confidence. All of those are headed straight north right now. So, if the stock market is fundamentally driven by the real economy, which I think it maybe not in the very short term, the medium term and long term it is, then I'm still pretty bullish. I mean, I'm pretty proud of myself because I did buy stock yesterday morning. Because I just felt like, there was this paranoia that was going on that was excessive. And look, what's going to happen with the stock market over the next, few weeks or even months, I don't know. But long term, I still think stocks are a good place to be, especially because, the other panic was, oh my gosh, interest rates are going to go up from 2.7% to 2.8%. I mean, the interest rates are so low right now. You're not going to make money buying bonds at a 3% interest rate. Come on, get in the stock market.
Well, as Baron Rothschild famously said, the time to buy is when there's blood in the streets, and you took his advice, Steve Moore.
Well, I don't know if there was blood in the street, but we're getting close to that. I mean, people were pretty panicked. I mean, we saw an 1,800 point decline. But, I have to say, this is another example of where the liberals, they say, this was the worst day on Wall Street, and the point drop on Monday was the worst ever, and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, that's because it's off 26,000. I mean, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember 1987, in October, we had a stock market crash. The stock market, in percentage terms, fell by 25% in one day, not 6%. So there was a little bit of overheated rhetoric here.
Imagine that. Steve Moore, he is Wall Street Journal columnist, CNN senior economist, Heritage Foundation economist. Steve, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, guys, have a great week. Take care.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.